Now it's not letting me bring you in, Greg. So we're back. Let's see here. Okay. All right, well, everybody, I think I'm on screen. Let's see. Oh, okay. Here we go. So let's bring one of us in at a time, but there we go, Greg. Okay, so a few technical difficulties. One and only Greg Rand. So for all of you that are joined or have joined, I apologize for there being a delay here. But anyway, so this is our first LinkedIn live show. My first guest is Greg Rand. We're going to talk a lot about the housing industry, the single-family rental industry, some of the fake news out there about the housing market, and really what we're doing with Renters Warehouse. So, Greg, welcome.
Thank you.
Always technical difficulties.
Yeah, no problem. Hey, man, it's a brand new television network, and you're one of the first stars with the illustrations to get all the exposure you're going to get. So it's a good thing.
Yeah, I really appreciate it. So Greg, we're talking about, a lot of people have heard both you and I talk a lot about the single family rental space, how big the opportunity is. And, I was just on another podcast before this, and we're talking about how a lot of people are talking about the housing market declining, about Inman, for example, started their whole new property page, investment page, and in their opening article, they stated that the single family rental space is a declining asset class and that people are moving into apartment buildings. But it was funny because it was a multifamily firm that stated this. So it's really interesting. So the first thing, we'll get into kind of our story a little bit later, but just let's talk about some things happening in the news. So the housing starts was a big news item that came out late last week. The home builders have declined 0.9% on housing starts, and I have some comments about that. Oh my God, right? So
isn't that a plummet?
It's a plummet. Yes,
that's a plummet. If I ever saw one, man.
So I met with a very large land developer yesterday in Denver, and they are starting as many as they can, as fast as they can, but they're running into a lot of issues. So the things we all know about labor, materials, just in general, the land costs. But the biggest thing that they stated around the country, everywhere they're building, were impact fees. And this is a group that has 60,000 lots in development. And they're not the actual builder. They develop the land so the builders can come in. And their thought was really that they're trying to do as many as they can, but they're running up against a lot of headwinds in the local municipalities and the bureaucracy and all of those things. So I want to get your view on that.
It's interesting. Well, the first thing I would tell you is that you could really drive yourself crazy listening to everybody coming up with whatever stat they can come up with today to paint the housing market in a negative light. I don't really care what some of those news outlets say. They've been wrong so many times in the past that hopefully people are starting to realize that negativity drumbeat just, if you sit in the sidelines and listen to those stories, you have missed opportunities for several years now. The housing starts being down means supply constrained, which means since demand is not constrained, demand is insatiable, then all that means is that it's going to continue to put upward pressure on price and upward pressure on rents, because not long ago they were saying there's not enough supply. That's bad. Now there's a constraint on housing starts, but what you just said is key, is that if there is a constraint on approvals and there's a constraint on developers being able to build, what you're describing, and I'm hearing it everywhere, is builders want to build. They're building as fast as they can because they see the demand as sizable as it is. And if their housing starts down, that's not a reflection on home builders being scared. It's a reflection on home builders being constrained. So there's an explanation for it. Bottom line is that whenever I see the negative stories, the first thing I look to is there any indication that population is not growing? And is there any indication that people are preferring to live outdoors going forward. And if those two things aren't happening, then demand for the housing market continues to grow. And all these little sprinkles on the surface don't make me nervous. I'm buying right now. We're recommending clients buy, and I'm buying. I just closed on two properties last week. So my money is where my mouth is, and I don't know where they're coming from. I'm trying to find, housing starts being down 0.9% is negligible. It's not even worth the ink of a headline, and yet it spins into a story about how builders are scared when you and I know that's not the case.
Yeah, it's we see it all over the country. I mean, there's a lot of great trends that are happening. So the build for rent, there was an article just recently talking about mom and pop investors are at the largest share of the investor purchasing ever, or in 19 years. So 60% of all investor purchases. So what is it? About 11% of all purchases of single families are investors. That's gone down from the heyday in 2012, but right now it's about 11%. This just came out from CoreLogic today. 60% of those are investors who bought 10 or fewer homes, and 20% of those homes they bought are entry-level homes. Now, the article is written in a way saying that mom and pop investors are pushing out small or lower entry-level homeowners to buy. But the problem is that a lot of those people can't buy, and so they rent. But and the fact that they're buying entry-level homes to rent out to entry-level renters is not a bad thing. There's a need for housing. It's not everybody is destined to be a homeowner, and these investors are buying in these markets because there is a need. If there was not a need, they wouldn't be buying. So nobody's pushing anybody out or keeping investors or keeping a homeowner from buying. It is really more about the fact that we need more homes. We need more affordable homes. Affordability is an issue, and it will continue to be an issue for a long time until they fix some things. But the other articles I've read recently that came out, and not to focus on the negative, was an article talking about home sales staying below that 6 million home mark, and really to think about what's a new normal, right? You have baby boomers who are staying in their houses longer. They're aging into their houses. There's been a lot of articles written recently that I really believe, and it's all over the country, about how baby boomers in the suburbs are retrofitting their houses for their later in life, and they're making those houses unsellable in the future to millennials because millennials aren't interested in these large homes and that are retrofitted for a senior. So there's some interesting dynamics happening. But the fact is, these articles that get written, you'll see thousands of comments of people who are buying into this, and that sentiment can change the market in a sense, can get people to be scared. So those are just some interesting things. So I didn't know if you have any more comments on that.
Well, yeah, I mean, one of the things that's really instructive for anybody who actually wants to understand the housing market themselves is to try to understand what the stats mean, okay? So the one you just quoted about how home sales numbers are down below 6 million. 6 million's been a high watermark the whole time. 6 million is a great number. 5.75 million is a great number. When the number of home sales declines, you know who gets nervous? People who make their living selling homes, all right? Because they are not going to make as much money and their businesses are going to suffer because the amount of turnover is down, right? There are a lot of people, I'll give you an example, people in the real estate sales business, the realtor industry, will tell you all about the housing crash of the early 1980s and the crash of 1990. And they're talking about a crash now. But when they talk about those crashes, those were both crashes of the housing business, meaning people weren't buying homes for reasons related to a negative economy. And in the case of the 80s super high interest rates, it wasn't a crash of market. All right, home prices only flattened out in the early 80s and early 90s. They didn't come down. In fact, they only came down nationally one time in the last 80 years, and it was the housing crisis of 10 years ago. And that was a situation that we can talk about, but I think people generally understand that the prices came down because they got overinflated. It wasn't a gradual upward trajectory like it had been for 80 years and then just dropped off. It had gone up too high and then come back down again and back to the same trend line that it was on. So number one, when you hear home sales are down and that's bad for the housing market, it's bad for the housing business. It's not relevant to the housing market. Okay, home sales being down means if there is an indication that population is shrinking, if there's an indication that people are living three generations in the same household and they're not looking to create household formation is high, population growth is high. Those are the two things that are harbingers for the future of the housing market. New home sales or housing starts are home builders, a segment that's never even been 10% of the housing market. Home builders are getting permits to build less than 0.9% fewer homes. The impact on the housing market of that is like a raindrop on the surface, and you're asking, how is a rainstorm on the surface going to affect the Gulf Stream? Okay,
right.
Population, household formation, those are the Gulf Stream, and the housing market travels in the Gulf Stream, and even hurricanes on the surface don't have any impact on the Gulf Stream. So it's anything home builder oriented. People need to understand, when you hear anything related to home builders, it might as well be a stat that says the sales of purple houses is down. If you saw a headline that said the sales of purple houses is down, you'd say purple houses aren't all that common. It doesn't affect the overall market. You'd be totally right. New home builders being constrained has no impact on the housing market, with the possible exception of supporting high prices in the future because supply is being constrained by that. It's all back to the same thing. You're going to find, if you do a search for positive housing news, you're going to find it. If you do a search for negative housing news, you're going to find a lot. You sent me a story before the broadcast about Market Watch talking about, what was their line? Something like, they're all going the route of, well, it's over, good times are over. A year ago, they said the same thing and they were wrong. So I would just like to encourage people, if you think, well, Greg is just looking through rose-colored glasses, what I'd say is, any media outlet you look at, you mentioned Inman, go back 12 months, see what they said was happening 12 months ago. Go back 12 months before that, see what they said was happening 12 months before that. If they've been predicting the same doom and gloom for years in a row and they've been wrong, I just want you to question them as a source. Okay? If somebody's wrong consistently, eventually stop listening and stop letting them impact your own point of view. And if somebody's right consistently, as I've been and as you've been, we've been recommending people buy houses since 2008. People said it's a housing meltdown. It's like, no, it's not. It's not a housing meltdown. It's a very, very painful housing correction. There's going to be a big recovery. Like my book that I wrote back then was called Crash Boom. Gives you an indication of what I thought was happening after the housing crash. So we've been saying it the whole time. People who listen to us have made money, have created wealth. And people who have listened to the doomsayers basically have lost. So if you want to win, learn it for yourself and consider the sources.
Well, yeah, and I think what the problem that we have now is there's so much housing data out there that can be misinterpreted, that a lot of people are just they're taking snippets and they're running with that to get traction on articles. Frankly, there are more of the freelance type of writers that aren't, in my opinion, true journalists and investigative journalists if they're going to really look into the data. And so they're just putting stuff out there to get traction, and it's disingenuous, really. But
ask yourself, and this is an important thing, because if you're people that are on LinkedIn, I love this platform because people who, like, of the three major platforms, I spend a lot of time on all three of them. I would conclude that people go to Instagram to have fun, they go to Facebook to complain, and they go to LinkedIn to talk about ambition and success. And so people who are here presumably are interested in ambition and success and learning and knowing. And here's to ask you, forget about housing news. If you're watching a story about something President Trump did today on Fox News, do you think the conclusion was drawn before the story was written? Answer, yes, they like whatever he did. You watch the exact same story on CNN about what President Trump did today. Do you think the story conclusion was drawn before the story was written? Answer, yes. Okay, everyone knows that. It's the same thing with economic news. Okay, and it's definitely the same thing with housing news. Why in the world Inman would launch Inman's articles have been, I stopped going to their comments because I'm so sick of this. They have started writing, and by the way, I would love for them to see this, get ticked off and challenge me to a debate. They can pick anybody they want, okay? Right. Get Dr. Schiller on here. I'd love to tear him to shreds on this stuff. If I sound mad about it, I am. I'm a pretty jovial, happy guy, but I don't like people getting scared because, I don't know, somebody wants to see a change in the White House maybe next year, so they want to see a recession, or they like getting more Google attention because they print negativity. Whatever their reason is, Inman has been embarrassing themselves for a couple of years on housing news. Okay, they said tax cut was going to hurt the housing market. Tax cut was going to hurt the housing market. It didn't happen. Okay, they said a year ago that affordability, more than a year ago, a year and a half ago, affordability is the big boogeyman in the housing market. Well, no, affordability means houses are getting more valuable. Last time I checked, when the asset is becoming more valuable, that's a good thing for the market. When the Dow Jones goes up, they don't say the affordability on the stock market is down and that's bad. They say the Dow is up, that's good news.
Right.
When the housing market is up, i.e. affordability means houses are more expensive, period. It relates to rates and everything else, but this basically means houses are more expensive and they find a way to spin that negative. It's just absurd, and it's really incumbent on everybody to understand, A, the source you're listening to is always biased. We're biased. We admit it, right? We think the housing market's an awesome place, make our living here. We're encouraging people to get in. People who listen succeed. If there's a recession next year, the housing market's not going to be deeply affected 10 years from now. So listen close to the advice. We're not saying flip. We're saying buy and then hold on for 15 or 20 years. That is going to be a winning solution. So I could go on all day with this thing, but I would say learn the stats yourself and make better decisions.
And I think a final thought on that is that we're not in the same kind of market conditions we were before, where we have over leverage and a bunch of speculation. It is a demand, it is a supply issue, and so that's going to keep housing strong. And so let's it's a good segue into the single family rental space, because we were just recently at the IMN conference. We're deep in this space. You know, we'll talk about our story here a little bit, but what are some of the things we're seeing? I mean, some of the things I'm seeing is the build for rent is becoming more prevalent because we've got a lot of builders that are seeing the opportunity. You have investors that love to own some of the new construction. You have a lot of these secondary markets where, I mean, for example, we have a buyer that we work with, a fund that will buy in any secondary market because it's different than it was in 2012. They can now manage remotely. The technology is there. The level of service has risen up. Efficiencies are there. So as yields have gotten compressed, efficiency, in my opinion, has outpaced some of that yield compression overall. And so you get a ton of tertiary market. Some markets we're in, some markets we're not. And you know, I used to joke a couple of years ago when I would talk to even the same investor, the same fund, and they say, well, what market do I need to scale in next? And I've been telling them for 2 years, any market. You don't have to scale any longer. You have operational scale and efficiencies from our company. Now you have the operational scale of 20,000 plus homes that we manage. And so we're seeing them go into these markets where there's great yield, there's great opportunity, there's many more we don't even know about. And so I want to kind of your opinion on that as well.
Yeah, well, I'll take it from the back and go forward. So secondary markets, I think, are really interesting. I have for a long time. We track markets, and one of the things that I think is really fascinating is that there are markets around the country that are secondary and tertiary markets that resemble other primary markets 20 years ago. Oklahoma City is very similar to Dallas 20 years ago. Okay, Pittsburgh very similar to Houston 20 years ago, 30 years ago. Okay, the energy industry is moving into Western PA. The energy industry moved decades ago into Houston. Supporting Houston's growth. Okay, it's supporting Pittsburgh's resurgence. Oklahoma City is an oil business also, an oil business town. All right, that's how Dallas really got its legs under it, and then just became a mecca for inbound job, job migration and population migration into Dallas. Dallas is a little crowd. You look at the chart on Dallas; the home prices have gone up like crazy for a number of years. You wouldn't be crazy to think that you might have missed the best run on Dallas real estate if you haven't been in for the last 6-7 years. Oklahoma City is just beginning their run. Okay, Denver's been on a run. Colorado Springs is just beginning their run. Nashville has had a great run. Chattanooga is only beginning their run, right? Charlotte and Atlanta have had a big run. But guess what? Columbia, South Carolina is just beginning, right? The Panhandle of Florida is just beginning. Alabama is the new Georgia, right? I mean, there's a lot, and I'm saying this, I'm being broad about it, but when you start looking at the population trends, the reasons why people go places is to follow quality of life, cost of living, and jobs. And the jobs go there for the cost of operating. And there are other states and other cities that are following the lead that other places have gone before, like making it super tax beneficial to move there and move your business there. So like Huntsville, Alabama is making it super attractive for the auto industry to keep bringing in more and more jobs. So Alabama is benefiting in general. Huntsville is benefiting specifically. And I'm a big believer that this is all about, people, you ask anybody on the street, give me the first rule of real estate, they'll say location, location, location. And then you look at most of the noise around real estate investing and it's deals, deals, deals. It's wrong, all right? The thing about location, location, location is show me where the progress is moving. Show me where the population is going and why. If I can read those tea leaves, and they're not that hard to read, the data is available. It's largely free. We make a lot of data free on renterswarehouse.com. And then you go and you search Google. There are ways of reading where it's all you go to where the market is already popped, where if you're even a substantial investor, you're still going to be David running around trying not to get stomped on by all the Goliaths. Right? All the big guys are in thousands and thousands of houses. I'd be less comfortable going there than I would going to Macon, Georgia, or Augusta, Georgia. All right? So I think that we're only beginning is the point. That every town in America, there's a story. And as long as, like even Detroit, that a couple of years ago, population was shrinking and caused me concern, they dealt with their issues of corruption. They dealt with their issues of overextension through their bankruptcy. And they dealt with their issues of the auto industry exiting. The auto industry is getting muscled to come back, and they are coming back. So that is one of the best buys in the country. But people wrote it off. So every market has a story. Understand the market and see if you can't pick one out that is on the way into having a resurgence, because it looks a lot like a nearby city did 20 years ago.
Well, yeah, and I think a lot of these markets that you're mentioning, a lot of these what a lot of people call secondary markets, but they're still a top 100 market. They really open their arms up to business as well. And as healthcare is booming, a lot of big healthcare companies moved into some of these cities, and you have a lot of millennials moving to them. I mean, Oklahoma City, I believe, it just came out, was the most investor sales of any market in the country, or percentage. I'm not sure if it was aggregate sales or percentage, but it was
and it's the new Dallas. It makes sense.
Right. And
Dallas. People in Dallas have connections to Oklahoma City. They talk. I mean, we have branches in both places. And our manager, Todd Brown, just moved from Oklahoma City to Dallas. His wife grew up, I think, in Dallas. He knows the market real well, and he totally confirmed what I was saying, that Oklahoma City is kind of the kid brother market, right? And so you look at the fundamentals of the market, and if it looks like it's heading in the same direction, then you take positions there, and you could see population growing 50% over the next 15 years in Oklahoma City. That's going to make housing prices stable as can be and rents stable as can be for that entire period of time. So you got to think, location, 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 not deals, deals, deals. Find the places where there's upward lift, and then place your bets, and then watch the progress grow.
Great. So what do you think about the build for rent industry?
Really interesting. I didn't get this when it first came out. My first reaction was, why? If you're going to build houses, why don't you just sell them the way you always sell them? But then I recall back in the 1990s, early 2000s, I was running a real estate company in the New York suburbs. Got to be a pretty big company. And one of the things we specialized in was home builders. And we had some big ones. We had a lot of small guys. We're building 30, 50 unit subdivisions at a time, right? They weren't working with 60,000 lots like your client is. And it began to make sense to me that builders, they're on a treadmill. Or better analogy is probably that they're playing musical chairs. If the music stops, they're screwed. They buy the land, they get the approvals. They usually borrow money to go and start building. And if the music stops before they're finished, they could wind up being overextended and in very big trouble. I saw a lot of guys, mostly guys, in the home building business. They go through these periods of being flush, and then these periods of being broke. The market caught them in the middle, right? And what would have happened if they kept 20% of all the houses they ever built as rentals? It would have changed their lives.
Totally.
Right? Guys that were building, guys that were small builders that built 2,000 houses. If they had kept just 100 of them, they'd be done. They'd be retired, right? Yep. So that was the first time it clicked in my mind that if you're building, you're on that treadmill, always having to find the next thing to build. Every time you have a closing on a subdivision, you have to find the next one so that your contractors stay working. You got to keep the machine going. If you basically form your own real estate fund by virtue of the homes you build, that's a little bit different. So I think it's great for that reason. When I see, I've had home builders, clients of yours who recently are selling, and I asked them, if the market's hot right now, inventory's tight, why are you giving us inventory to sell? And their answer was, because when we can open a subdivision of, say, 80 houses and the first 20 are already in contract before we break ground, our bankers love that. Makes a lot of sense, right? So they're basically willing to give you a bit of a deal on the earlier properties in order to be able to show the progress and get everybody in there starting to build, not spec houses, but houses that are already sold. When the houses are up, the neighborhood starts to take shape. Now the home buyers start getting it. Home buyers get a little queasy about a piece of dirt with a sign on it saying this is going to be a beautiful neighborhood. They want to see the neighborhood start to take shape. So there's a lot of reasons why it works for the builders, and we know why it works for the investors and the tenants, because these things, they actually yield pretty well because you can charge a little bit more. If you're the only new home for rent in a town at any given time, or one of very few, you're going to get 60, 70 bucks a month more, $100 a month more in rent. Your yield deficiency, and it's under warranty, so you're not coming back for a year to fix anything serious.
Well, and so we're seeing there's some different types. So there's the big home builders that have inventory that may not be rented that they want to sell, and they can put renters in. So you're looking at, like, when you look at a listing, it'll say projected rent. Then there are home builders like the guys I met with yesterday that took all their model homes, turned them into rentals, created a fund. It's appreciated insanely because they bought Phoenix. I mean, this was in 2008. Phoenix, Denver, Las Vegas. Now they're selling them as a portfolio. Then those are more of what we call like the spot lots, right? So where they're spread out, and there's investors who would prefer to buy lots spread into a subdivision because the value of the other homes are going to help lift them up.
Right.
Then there are the home builders like BB Living. There's Watermark Equity, which is a client of ours as well, that have built fully enclosed subdivisions of either 50 to 100 or to 200 homes. That is a rental community. They're either targeting baby boomers, millennials, or in the outskirts, commuters, a combination of both. They have a clubhouse. They have all these great amenities that you would get in a nice apartment building, but you can walk your dog outside. You can sit on your porch and smoke a cigarette. It's a different kind of environment. And even in Texas, where I'm very familiar with outside of Fort Worth, they're building these huge multifamily developments to target baby boomers. Problem is that you overbuild, the multifamily rents might actually go down where the single family rents aren't, because it's really hard to overbuild unless you were like we were back in 2005 where they just built too much. So, and then some investors are interested in buying those whole communities. BB Living, for example, they build them and hold on to them. These other guys, they build them. As soon as the last one's built, they want to sell it so they can go do another one and another one. And they're building these communities, and there's a demand for them. And the investors, there's different investors that want different things. Some of them want to be diversified into communities. Some want the whole thing. And so it's really interesting. And we're seeing, the lesser opportunity is probably the home builder who's giving you inventory to sell as a projected rent. The better opportunity are those that are building them for rent, stabilizing them, and then selling them, whether they're scattered or all together. And so I don't know what you think about that.
Well, what's interesting about some of what you just said is that single family is following in the footsteps of multifamily from back in the 90s. Again, history repeating itself, right? So it's not shocking that what started out in SFR was a bunch of players that came in on the tail end of the housing crisis and gobbled up kind of the same kind of product in kind of the same places, right? They proved the asset class. They established the baseline NOI. They proved the management systems and the technology were all doable. Wasn't long ago people said it couldn't be done. Now everybody who really tried figured it out, like everybody. So it was a pain in the neck, but it wasn't rocket science, right, at the end of the day. And so now we've got an asset class. And so then people start thinking creatively, which is what would happen next. Multifamily got into 55 and older, assisted living, community amenities and things like that, master plan communities. That all happened 10 years after the beginning of the big boom of multifamily that came up in the early 90s. Right? So if you want to really follow this thing back, you go back to the mid 80s, you had the deregulation of the commercial banks that led to a lot of risky lending on the part of the savings and loans, because the savings and loans couldn't keep up with the commercial banks anymore. The playing field was unleveled, and it screwed the smaller banks. So the smaller banks started making riskier bets to keep up. Those riskier bets didn't play out. We had a big, colossal savings loan blowout, which had a lot of commercial and residential projects that were half-baked. The government got involved after all this distressed real estate. Starts to sound familiar, right? So deregulation, crazy lending, a bubble bursting, a lot of distressed property. Big players with capital came in for the first time, started buying these properties at fire sale, right? Yep. They were planning on buying and flipping for trade. Once they got their feet wet and they got planted in there, there's a more institutional capital that wants to buy even more commercial real estate. And the modern era of REITs emerged out of the early 90s, and now, trillions of dollars worth of REIT capital owning commercial real estate, much of it multifamily. Fast forward to the 2000s, deregulation, coming for a trade. Besides, they likely got their foundation in place, established a new baseline, and now creative strategies are coming along. Secondary markets, college towns, new build communities where every house in the neighborhood is a rental. You got a pool and a theater facility and a clubhouse for rentals, right? I mean, all those, I expect to see all of it. I actually can't wait to see the fund who shows up and does a college town fund that buys residential property in college towns all over the big college town meccas around the country. Guaranteed to happen, because it's just the same thinking that worked last time in multifamily is now going to work in single family. But single family has some distinct advantages. Namely, you could decide to sell one door if you want to. For whatever reason, that door is not a fit any longer, or these doors west of the highway you no longer want, or you've taken enough profits on them, you want to get out and reallocate. You can't do that as easily with multifamily. And so the risk management and dynamic strategic advantages of your doors being granular, and that hasn't even shown up yet on the scene. So there's so much development left to happen. I think we're second inning in this in terms of the creative strategic moves you're going to see different people make. And it's getting really exciting for everything you're talking about is real, but it reminds me of something that already happened and worked.
Absolutely. And, I want to shift gears a little bit about what we're doing. But first, a lot of people I've talked to recently, and some of the comments I've read on some stuff that I've posted, and we're seeing as much activity in a different way as there was in 2012, 2013 right now. I'm seeing it with investors who want to buy. There's a lot of investors who've realized a great return. They bought portfolios of 25 to 200 doors. Now they're selling them. It might be cashing out, going into a triple net lease, Walgreens, you never know, whatever it is. But we're seeing a lot of these investors don't realize that they can actually sell their entire portfolio. And that's what we're really trying to change and educate on a lot of these investors, because we have so many investors, whether they're a guy who wants to buy one house, whether it's a guy who wants to buy 10, 20,000, there is much more demand right now than there is products. And a lot of it has to do with, all these investors have been buying. It's just now more of an organized way. It's becoming more institutionalized. There's groups like ourselves and others who have marketplaces. Now you have a place to go. You can buy an investment property. You can understand the yield. You can get the financing. Everything is in place. And so really now it's more about just outreach and letting these investors and getting in front of these investors to understand that they have an asset that they can now sell, and they don't have to vacate the house, and they don't have to do what the realtor tells them, which is wait till the lease is up, vacate it, fix it up, and sell it. And for me personally, it's more of just about education and getting in front of these investors and let them know that there's buyers out there, and those who are saying that the buying frenzy, or whatever you want to call it, that these funds are not buying any longer. The big institutional funds are no longer buying the foreclosures like they were, but the mid-cap funds and the medium-sized guys are very aggressively buying because they're seeing the opportunity. Prices are going up. The affordable homes are are becoming less of a common thing. So I really see that they're taking advantage of buying in these tertiary markets, buying the $150,000 to $250,000 home, renting it out as an affordable house, and they're buying as much as they can. I mean, I get emails constantly from these guys saying they want more product, and it's just a matter of finding it.
Yeah, there's no question. I mean, we see it every day. Our whole business is geared around investors at all levels. You open this thing up talking about how the majority of investment properties right now are being bought by small investors. That's a direct result of the highway that got paved. You know, like it's reasonable to look at this. And you and I have been doing this together for 10 years in different businesses until recently. My favorite part about being part of Renters Warehouse is that we're finally working together now.
Yep.
We said years ago that we knew that those paths would eventually converge. But back in the day, it was like we all of us in SFR. SFR has been a fun industry to be part of because we all had a couple of things in common. One, we believed the market was going to recover when it was down. Two, we bet the farm on it, right? So we were all sort of people cut from a similar cloth. We believed there was a promised land on the other end of this very dense jungle. And we took our machetes out and started hacking our way through. And so all the things that had to be built to allow companies like Invitation Homes and American Homes for Rent now have tens of thousands of houses. The idea that you had to build the road, you had to hack through the jungle, you had to wear out the trail. The trail ended up becoming a really good path. The path ended up becoming a road. Now it's actually a nicely paved highway. We've got the exit ramps and the McDonald's and the quick trips on the turns. It's available for anybody who wants to ride on that highway and get to the promised land easily. And like guys like us, we think of our company as being, one of those freight lines. You want to get your stuff across we can help you with that. Maybe we're even a toll booth. Maybe we're the ones that have the gas station on the side of the road. We're facilitating, but so many of the service providers that built what we built for these unprecedentedly large investors took what we built and then repackaged it and spun it for everybody else. So we're just seeing the beginning. Like, look, there's 1 million home purchases a year by investors, and it's really hard. It's hard to do research, all right? Zillow's a beautiful website for home buyers, not set up for investors. What's the ROI? Nobody knows. It's a pretty house. What's the ROI, right? They don't have it on there. Same with every other real estate website. Real estate agents are eager to help, but they can't be that helpful because nobody taught them how to measure a yield. Realtors think a yield is like that triangular sign that means the other guy goes next. Right, so it's like they don't have it. It's not. They're in the home ownership business. Property management is a beast. I'm sitting outside, the acres of people who do that work. So the point is, it's really hard to get 1 million transactions a year. It's really hard, and yet 16 million units exist out there, mostly mom and pop investors. But now it's easy, or easier, right? We're 3 weeks away from launching version 2 of Renters Warehouse, which is a property management company upon which we built a real estate brokerage company, capped off with a real estate portal with 1 million properties for sale, all sortable, searchable, and filterable by ROI and other investment metrics. It's going to make the process of researching and planning and then executing and then long-term holding way more seamless and simple than it's ever been. And that means that I think the existence of a company like ours and the competitors that will come are going to make it so that the percentage of properties that are bought by investors is going to go up because the desire is there, but it's hard. If the desire is there and it's easy, like our product destroys the stock market in its long-term wealth creation performance. And again, anybody wants to debate that, bring the data. It's a fact. So we're illuminating the truth about housing in this country as an investment vehicle that a lot of people understood intuitively, but they couldn't actually tell you. What is America? What's the ROI of America? Answer is 10%. When you add appreciation on top of yield, no matter where you go, you wind up right at about 10. And unlevered 10 by owning a piece of the country.
Well, so what I think is interesting too, and to your point about more people buying investment properties, it is so difficult to invest in real estate, or it has been, that people will pay someone tens of thousands of dollars to introduce them to somebody else who will then sell them a property, to educate them. Right. And I like to tread carefully because some groups, I think that as there's less friction in the transaction, the people in the middle who are not providing a ton of value are going to get pushed out. I did a podcast earlier today.
I think there's so much snake oil. And
right. I know your opinion on this.
yeah, we had a funny conversation because one of the things that I've said for years, I don't think flipping is a great idea. I think it's unnatural. It's an unnatural way to invest in real estate. I get it. I get the idea of trying to find a cheap deal and try to make a quick score in service of buying something you could eventually hold. But you're buying an appreciating asset and flipping it before it appreciates. You're buying an asset that's taxed as capital gains, and you're selling it too soon to get that treatment. Getting treatment as ordinary income. You're buying a long-term asset and treating it like a day trade. So it's a mistake, right? But unless it leads to holding. But one of the things I've always said is that, there are a lot of people out there that say, come to my seminar, right? I'm going to teach you all about how to get rich in real estate with no money down, but it's going to cost you 25 grand to get the secrets. So like literally pay me 20 grand and I'll teach you the secrets of how to get rich with no money, since you're not going to have any left after
then I'll loan you your first deal.
Right. And then you called me one day, you were in a seminar. I won't say where, so we don't give away who it was, because they might have been a friend of yours. And you said, I can't believe it, because I thought I heard you say that shtick before about give me your 20 grand, I'll teach you how to make money with no money because you don't have any. And they literally practically said those words. They said, the first thing we're going to teach you after you give us 20 grand is how to make it back, because with none of your own money. So literally, there's just a lot of bad, but it's a very interesting thing. I said before, Zillow, fantastic website, but not designed for investors. Real estate brokerage, great companies. Real estate agents, great people, not designed for real estate investors. So if you're a passionate person about investing, if you're what we like to call a real estate junkie, right? You're into this, and you're looking for help. If you go looking, like I encourage anybody who's watching this, open up a browser, go to Google, search real estate. You're going to find the platforms and the portals. You're going to find the brokerage companies. Change your search to real estate investing. You're going to find bigger pockets. You're going to find us. You're going to find Forbes articles. You're not going to find Zillow, Trulia, Realtor.com, Remax, Keller Williams, or Coldwell Banker. You're not going to. They're not going to be there. And then you just, for a moment, what does that mean? What does it mean in 2019 when you do a search on Google for something and don't find it? It means it doesn't exist. Professional services around real estate investing don't exist. That's why seminars fill up. People are hungry for an opportunity to talk to somebody about this and learn about it because they can't find it anywhere.
It's complicated.
So they go to a blog site, they go to a seminar. That's the reason why this is so great. I love that you're doing this. I love that they invited you into the beta, because we're going to create a channel here on LinkedIn Live, talk about these topics, interview people who are doing it, so that everyday folks or even experienced investors that are just drawn to this topic naturally because they love it. People are serious enthusiasts about this topic, but they don't have a place to go to engage. And so that's all changing now, and this is part of it.
Yeah, it's part of it. And you can go now direct to the consumer. You don't need to go through a middleman to introduce you to somebody who's a competent turnkey provider in a market. So I did a podcast right before this. It's going to show in a week or two that they used to have to pay somebody to find them buyers. Now they're going direct to the buyer, and they're educating them, and they're providing value, and it's going to push out some of the lower non-performing type turnkey guys. Same thing in the property management business. There's some consolidation, the level of service is going up. The guys who can't keep up with it and be efficient are going to get pushed out, and it's part of the natural progression. So we've got a few more minutes here. I just want to talk about a couple of things, how we came to be here, you and I, because you mentioned this earlier, and then just a little bit about some goals and things like that. So Greg and I have known each other for a while. I got into the single family rental space in 2012. I was actually on vacation with my wife in Europe, and I got a call that Blackstone wanted to meet me, and that they were going to buy millions of homes and all this. And I was kind of like, this isn't worth it. And then one night I did some research, and I flew back from my vacation, met with Invitation Homes, and started buying investment properties. Now, before that, during the downturn, I was doing this. We were buying discounted properties, fixing them up, helping people get loans to refinance into, and had our own little turnkey business. Talk about iBuyers. iBuyers have been around forever. I'll buy your house for this, fix it up and resell it. Like it's it's insane. But so I really got into this space and made a decision in 2012 to put all of my effort, energy, and time and passion and purpose behind it. And that's when you and I met, and we've kind of been on parallel paths. A few years ago with investability, we almost were together, and then that didn't work out. And now, you and I met at the Think Realty conference in Irvine last year and really started talking about this. And now you're here, so it's exciting, and I'm very passionate about the space. You are.
Yeah, Kai, as you were telling the story about being on vacation and the phone rings and it's Blackstone, I pictured you being like, "Oh, BS! It's not Black hanging up on him."
That's it. Was Black who? Blackstone? Who are they? And then I started researching them, and then I actually sent an intern to go meet with the guy, and they were like, "You sent an intern to meet with us? We want you to start buying. We're going to buy 3,000 homes in Chicago in the next 2 years, and we want you to do it." So,
So I mean, listen, my story is simple. I have always believed that the real estate industry was underplaying its hand, that it had this powerful asset, but didn't treat it that way. It treated it only as a home. The housing crisis was going to give way to a big investment boom, I believed, and I put all my marbles in that. What's my analogy here? In the basket? I don't know. I went all in to try to build a national brand for real estate investors, and I got detoured in the institutional side because that was so lucrative and it was so cool. And it was so challenging, but I always wanted to get back to the retail level, which is where we are now. So a little more than a year ago, you and I hung out at the Think Realty conference in Irvine, and we talked about it. And all of a sudden, the what ifs started popping out of our heads. Like, what would happen if you built a real estate brokerage company on top of the national property management company, and then capped it off with that portal? If you had the seamless experience from research and planning all the way through execution, all the way through a 25-year hold, that would change the whole landscape. You guys you were at Ernest Warehouse at the time, you had the foundation in place, painstakingly built, brick by brick. I mean, literally, it's like, I want to have a railroad company, but there's no railroads, and you guys are the only ones that actually had the tracks already laid. So you laid the tracks. And the original dream of Own America was to be a national real estate brand for investors. And so sort of we came together as companies and realized that you were vulnerable because you were just a property management company, a great one, but that's all. I was vulnerable because I was just an online platform. Pretty cool, but that's all I was. So I was treating it as a financial instrument only. You were treating it as a physical instrument, a physical product. You bring those two things together, and we're creating a category of business here that is a real estate investment services company or some variation of that phraseology. A company, a brand built for investors that is full stack,
Yep.
Search portal, execution through brokerage and property management. Here's the point, is that when other real estate companies say, hey, we should open an investment division, got to go build yourself a property management company first. When property management companies say, hey, we want to get into real estate sales, well, how's your portal treating? You don't have one of those, you need to go build a portal. Hope you have a couple extra $1 million laying around, because that's what it costs to build one of these things.
Yep.
And when Zillow themselves decides to create an investment section of their website, they're not going to have the seamless integration with property management and brokerage. So even they're going to be at a disadvantage against this business model because of the vertical integration.
Well, and it's funny because back in 2013 or 14, I worked with a group and we tried to build a underwriting platform to underwrite homes anywhere in the country, pipe in the data, some people there to underwrite it. The technology wasn't there. Then I came across investability, had the platform to pipe in the MLS, but didn't have the infrastructure and the boots on the ground and the customers to tie it in. Now we're here. It's come full circle. This is what I've been trying to get this forever. Now I'm more back on the portfolio sales, focusing with that. We're on the verge of signing some big clients where we're going to act as our acquisition arm and do exactly what I was trying to do in 2013. And we've gone, I was looking at this earlier and I was talking to some people earlier. We've gone from we went from a franchise to a centrally managed, corporately owned property management company. It's a national brand, one of the largest in the country, to now we're a national brokerage focused in the investor space. But we're doing pretty well on that side of things. We have a long way to go to get the level of service that we want that we're striving for, and that is a buttoned up, like high level of service all around. But we've really grown this company. I mean, just in 6 months to being a property management company, now we're a national brokerage, and the demand has been overwhelming. And the positive demand and positive affirmation of doing this has been great because there is a need. I mean, we have clients who are large funds that are coming to us going, I like what you're doing. I wish you had done it. I wish this was around in 2013 because we would have bought our homes for you. Right. So we're positioning ourselves, and there's going to be more competition into the space. It's great, but there's a long way to go. But I'm super passionate about it, as you know.
Yeah, and for me, the thing that gets me really excited is the fact that I know that there are people who are going to, like, we're launching our portal version with the million listings on it in about a month, so July 15th. And there are going to be people who ping you and I and the rest of us here 10 years from now saying, I'm really glad you guys did what you did. Like, thank you. I feel like I've got financial peace of mind in my future. I own 6 houses right now. My mortgages are down to 40%. I took your plan and put it into action, and you guys helped me all the way through, and it made a big difference in my life. And so that's fun. It's nice to, like, the fact that we're sitting here today and the best wealth creating product on the planet, houses in this country, is unrepresented. And yet it's still being done a million times a year. There's still 16 million of them, but it's actually unrepresented. Nobody's really concentrated on illuminating the power of it. We're kind of the first ones who are going to get credit for doing that. We're going to be a pretty big company over the next 5 and 10 years, household name. That's kind of what, some people ask you, like, what's the goal? Well, the goal is today you say name an investment company.
So is that your, that was going to be my next thing that I was going to get into. We both like Gary. We watch him a lot. I listen to all of his podcasts. So what is your verbally stated goal for the company and for yourself personally?
I don't have, I'm going to say Merrill Lynch or Charles Schwab or something. If you ask them to name a real estate company, they're going to say Remax or Coldwell Banker. If you ask them for a real estate investment company, you're going to hear crickets. 10 years from now, they're going to say Renters Warehouse because we're the first ones trying to do it. Nobody's going to be able to catch up, I don't think, because they got to build the property management infrastructure to be able to catch up. And so that is like the moat and the wall around our kingdom here. And we've got the vision and the passion for the people. So that's, my goal for the company is that it belongs on Main Street in USA, a company that represents that talent and investment, and that belongs in every town in this country. So I see 1,000 locations. I see a multi-billion-dollar market capitalization for the company. And it's all because we're just doing what should have been done years ago by somebody else. The commercial industry should have done it. The residential industry should have done it. They left it for us in 2019. And so that's that. And for me, I just want to keep having fun and making money and helping people do the same.
Yeah, I think it's about, it's a purpose. Like I really believe that's something where we're aligned, from the choices of where we've decided to live. I moved out of Chicago and picked the right place that I felt was for my family, and understanding that if I have passion and purpose behind what I'm doing, I'll be successful no matter where I'm at. It doesn't mean it's easy, but my goal is, obviously you want to make money, but it's really something more than that. It's to have a legacy. It's to have a purpose. It's to really help and give to people. And I'm really about being grateful and having the growth mindset. And if you have all those things, the money will come. And what we're doing is awesome. I mean, I've worn a lot of different hats at the company, and I've switched around a lot of different things. And it's awesome to just be involved in this part. Like the property management business is tough. It's really tough, and you're seeing that. I'm also excited. I don't want to miss this. So when we did this deal and I came on board, it wasn't contemplated that I was going to run the national sales organization, but that's what came about. And so we've got 150 real estate agents making our way to 1,000. And one of my favorite things is that while we establish a new category of business, a real estate investment firm, we're also establishing a new category of professional, a real estate investment advisor. Yes.
It's a really cool gig, and it's better than being a real estate agent because you're dealing with repeat customers. You sell them a house, you then lease the house, you make another commission. A year later, you lease it again, you make another commission, you sell them a second house. All right. And then you make another commission when they lease it out. And then again, a year later, you sell them a third house. And then as a real estate agent, you build recurring revenue. Okay. But you're going out talking about something different than anybody else in town. And the worst thing about being a real estate agent is the sameness. Real estate agents are all the same. I come from that world. I can say that without offending anybody. It's the same. Everybody's the same. So same. Logos, yellow, mine's green, we're the same. MLS listing, straight commission, yard sign, open house, show it till it's sold. MLS, it's all the same. And so when you're in the business, we're having a good run right now attracting people. They're like 2 years in the business and they realize now it sucks because they're the same as everybody else, except for the fact that they're not experienced. So they're actually worse. And so they're, in a business where you're trying to, because you're the same, you're trying to win business because of who you know, as opposed to what you know, because what you know is not special, right? Everybody knows the same thing. Access to MLS, open a lockbox. Tell me about the school district. Here, it's what's the ROI over here versus over there, right? What investment plan should I have retire in 20 years with X number of dollars of income every month? We have the ability to do that, and I'm excited. Just like I said about investors thanking us in 10 years, I'm really looking forward to people in the sales organization who go from making $60,000 to $250,000 doing this, who themselves build a portfolio of properties that they own. And then after 10 or 15 years of being in the real estate business, rather than being on that treadmill for 15 years, they've actually got a book of business and a portfolio, and they are independently wealthy too. And their kids watched them do it and showed them the American dream firsthand. So creating a new profession and then helping the people that take that profession on and helping them become successful, that's some really cool stuff. And I'm looking forward to seeing it play out.
Yep. It's the broke broker concept. I know a lot of people who help make a lot of other people money and they never invest in themselves. And I fell in that trap a little bit myself, to be honest, so in teaching our own employees and our salespeople to become investors and be involved in, it's great. And that's the last thing I want to leave it with is, we've been hiring people all over the country and trying to bring in that growth mindset type of person who is willing to, is hungry and willing to go out there and put themselves out there personally and professionally to grow their business and help others, because this is really the greatest thing about this business. It is very rewarding because we're helping investors, we're helping people create wealth. And that's whether it's a big fund or a guy who owns 1 or 2 houses who now owns 5. Look, people tell me what strategy should you have, and I say get to 5 as fast as possible, then get to 10 as fast as possible, then get to 15 as fast as possible, and then get to 20. So and it's want to hedge against college tuition, and a whole different subject on that. Start investing, buying houses. Want to teach your kids how to be entrepreneurial and learn. Have them help you invest into real estate. It's going to be a much better ROI, I would imagine, than $100,000 in debt. So, any last comments?
Just that I appreciate that you're doing this. You've done a great job here on LinkedIn. We laugh around here because I do a lot of LinkedIn. Noel does a lot of LinkedIn. So does Kevin, the CEO. And Noel gets like 3 times the traction on his stuff than we do. So we know who the star is among us. So thank you for doing this. I appreciate being the, I guess one of the first, or is this the first?
I did one a while back, but yeah, this is the first one of the show. We had a few glitches. We might still be having a glitch. I have no idea. So if you're not seeing this live, you'll see it. It's showing on the side here that everything's being broadcast on my end live. But if it isn't, it isn't. And so this is also about creating content and education and getting ourselves out there. So free education, and you can
never pay for real estate education. Get all the free stuff first, and then if you're left wanting more, you can go pay. But don't pay anybody to get educated.
And we're very accessible. LinkedIn is my favorite platform. It's the B2B platform. It's what's our target client? It's a professional that wants to invest into real estate. It's a professional that owns real estate. It's a professional that's turned into a professional investor. There's a lot of different things, and so that's our target. We're both accessible on LinkedIn. We're both, Greg and I are all over social media, and we love to help educate and help people. We love that. So that's what I like about you, Greg. So that's it. And I guess we're done with our first show. Thank you
You
very
just-
much.
You got to have like a sign off, like, "Hey, go be careful out there," or something.
Go be careful out there. Buy real estate.
All right, later. Thank you.
Yeah. Bye bye.
See you.